Almost there. It's thinking. All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a December 4th edition of the MSP Initiative podcast. It's been a little while since we've done one of these. We were on the road like everyone else over the last, I don't know, September, October, November gauntlet for some reason in the sandbox, I like to call it, where everybody likes to park their events. I don't know, like rubber banded together. Don't know how or why that works out the way that it does, but it just seems like it is. So we were on the road. We did a bunch of block parties, including DattoCon in Miami, and we have that album out there if you want to check out all of the post-party shenanigans. And then we also went to Kaseya Connect in Sydney. And so those are the last two at the end of the year. But in between all of those, since September until now, earlier this year, we launched the Channel Sports Tour. We went to Kansas City, Tampa Bay, Green Bay, and Dallas. So we are pretty excited about that because, first time we've done a formal kind of live sporting type event. Our last one of the year is coming up this Monday night in Los Angeles. This is December 8th. I think we have like 70 people coming, which is pretty crazy, but I guess it gains steam a little bit, which is great. So anyway, um, thank you for everyone who has come out to the Channel Sports Tour. It kind of kicked off as our inaugural one for 25. We're going to continue it into 26. We have a lot of cool stuff coming up in 26. So stay tuned as we kind of turn the corner here. We're cross over into 26 here in less than 30 days, 2026. So stay tuned at mspinitiative.com. All right, today we bring back a familiar guest. If you've been following the podcast, go ahead and let you introduce yourself for anyone who doesn't know you. A little bit of
Sure.
background, and then we'll go into current events. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, George. Thanks for having me on again. We also sponsored that DattoCon party, which was awesome. Great event. Actually, I'm kind of sad to see DattoCon kind of end. What a great conference that was. But appreciate you guys and what you do for the community at all of these events. So my name is Anup Ghosh, co-founder and CEO at Threatmate.
Welcome, welcome. Yeah, let's talk about that.
Mhm.
DattoCon had a long run, right? Like I'm talking, what was the first one? Maybe it was 2015, 2016, went all the way to 2025. It's like 9 or 10 year run there.
Good run. Yep.
That's a great run. And quite frankly, I didn't count all the chairs like I normally do, but it seemed like there was, I don't know, 16, 1,700 people there, not including vendors and staff, like just actual attendees, which is pretty good
Pretty
for,
good.
an
Yeah.
event in our space. So it's kind of surprising for sure. But, yeah, I mean, I'm curious, right? Because you guys
Yep.
are, kind of on the relatively newer side in the timeline, right? In MSP
Absolutely.
land.
Yep.
And I'm sure you have your own opinions, and I'll ask you them, right, about
Yeah.
events. Are they worth it? Like, is the juice worth the squeeze? And do you find value based on the commitment financially to do that?
Well, the short answer is yes. Every business obviously cares about their spend, and obviously, if it didn't work, we wouldn't keep coming back.
Mhm.
Um, we definitely, you do this as well for a living, and people seem to think it's a party, but boy, is it long hours. Like I'm at an event right now, and it's literally 7:30 to oh dark 30, right? Every single day. So I've also been on that September through now December, sandbox as you called it, and I am so looking forward to going home. Um, but it is a great way for us to get in front. As you mentioned, we are a startup in this space. And the best way for us to get our brand out there, frankly, is to go to these events, meet with folks in boardrooms as we are now, or in the exhibit hall. And I find it pays off, but it is expensive. You're absolutely right about that.
I'm curious, and I think everybody runs into this regardless of industry, but all right, if you're not doing event investment, how
Yep.
does digital work? Does emails work? Do outbound calling work, postcards? Like, what is actually working other than seeing somebody in person?
It's the literally the $1 million question, right? So just like many of our MSP partners have their own peer groups, I've got a CEO peer group of other SaaS companies, and everyone is struggling with this question you just asked, right?
Mm,
And inevitably, we always come back to the events and we always say, boy, if we could do something that's a little more cost effective, we would, right? So when you have that answer, George, you let me know. But right now, most of our go-to-market is event driven.
mm,
And we struggle between, do we do the big ones, which are national slash global? Do we
mm.
do the regional ones where we go do a tour, in people's cities? Some people like that. From our analytics, it seems like the big ones, like the ones that you guys sponsor, right? Those are the ones where we get the most amount of engagement. And you get the ability to do some interesting things. We had a hacking lounge at IT Nation
Okay.
Connect, and it was one of those big 10 by 20 spaces right outside the Solution Pavilion. And instead of just selling, we decided to lean in on teaching people how to hack. And that was a ton of fun. Like we had kind of like one of those passports you see, but instead of you visit vendor booths, the idea was you solve these hacking challenges.
Hmm.
Um, and one of them was lock picks. So many of us kind of grew up around picking locks. And so we had a whole bunch of these transparent locks and lock picking kits, and crack some locks and you get that stamped. We also had a Wi-Fi hacking challenge, a capture the flag challenge, and it was all just educational plus good fun. And if you solved all the challenges, you got elite certified elite hacking ribbon for your badge. So people walked around like, oh yeah, I'm elite hacker now. So that was fun.
No, that's definitely different. And something, I think that this is always the rub, right? Like, why does somebody go take time out of their business to attend one of these things versus, you know, staying at home and just working, right? Being in the trench every
Yeah.
day, right?
Yep.
I
Yeah.
mean, the argument I've always heard was, hey, I'm going to learn and network with people, but then you always find that there's a pretty large turnover, right, from one year to the next on an event, right? So, did they
Yep.
feel like they got what they needed out of it? Did they feel like they didn't
Oh.
learn what they needed out of it? Did they feel like, they just can't take that much time out of their business on a consecutive basis? I don't know. I'm sure there's a multi-layered answer to all of these things, but um, I like the approach, because instead of being sold that, right, it's a little bit different.
Right.
And if you have a
Well,
if you feel good about something, it tends to pay off in that.
just to kind of riff on what you're saying, I think MSP partners go to these events for two reasons. I think the first is to learn,
Hmm.
right? Oftentimes they're not taking time out of their workday to go learn. And if you go to a conference that focuses on content, you definitely will learn, right? And yes, AI is a buzzword. We all know there's a lot of hype, right? But there's also some substance there. And you need to learn how other MSPs are leveraging AI to take care of some of the more mundane tasks and get that off your plate, right? So that's an example where you could go to a good conference and learn something that's meaningful, right?
That's fair.
Um,
So let me just pivot right off of that. You
sure.
guys are largely security focused. We're going to talk about that in a second. But
Yeah.
you have been on the road this last 90 days or so. AI
Yep.
seems to be front and center. Has that drown out the security conversation a bit because everybody now has their attention on this other topic?
It definitely I look at it with a long view,
Mm,
right? So right now we're in the hype phase of AI.
mm,
Um, in MSPs is still pretty early days, so I don't think it's drowning out cybersecurity. I think right now what you're seeing is just like uh, both skepticism but also curiosity. Someone said the word to me the other day, AI curious. Are you AI curious? So I think that's a healthy thing. And obviously, AI and cybersecurity are not at odds or not tangential. We use AI in our product. We just don't brag about it as much. So it's a tool. It's intended to help you automate portions of your business so that you spend less human time on it. And we can do that in cybersecurity too. So I just don't, the skeptical part is we know it's a hype wagon. We know that people are gonna, lean in and then get disappointed. And then after the wave crashes, there'll be people will just do it and they won't call it AI anymore. It'll just be how we do business. Right.
I'm with
Yep.
you. I'm with you.
Yep.
It's funny. I listen to sports radio a lot here in Philadelphia, and
Yep.
no, I'm sure it surprises nobody listening to this. And the other day it was like artificial intelligence or artificial insanity, and I was like, oh, that's a pretty good line. I like that. I'm gonna write that down. Too funny, but yeah. And then they were talking about, well, imagine you're an NFL coach and you're using
Yep.
all these analytics and you're asking the large language model, what should I do in this situation? And it's like there's something to, hey, you're a human being,
Right.
you're going with your gut, you've been there before, you've seen this before, like don't let the movie
Yep.
repeat, versus what the analytics say, right? And
Right.
like then you make these crazy calls and you're like, why would you do that? And they're like, oh, but the analytics said that was the right thing to do in that situation. And you're like, well, then it was wrong.
Yeah, so is that the next Moneyball movie,
Yeah.
right? It's don't go with your gut, go with the AI, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, I can see that playing out. It is interesting to look at what are all these different sectors that are now adopting AI, right? And obviously MSPs is one of them. I just attended a really interesting event. You may have heard of it, George. It was called Horizons, which was out in Scottsdale, Arizona, hosted by the Top Down Venture guys. And they're our
Hmm.
lead investors. You know, it's an understatement to say AI was used in every sentence, but I will say there was a lot of conviction on how AI will be disrupting the MSP market and, either adopt it or perish. It was essentially the message, right?
Well,
And
I
so,
mean, I keep on using these examples, and this whole year I've been, using real world examples out of our space on how it has failed. Like it has been
mhm,
implemented and it has been pulled back. Uh,
mhm.
Early this morning, I stopped by a drive-through, and still a lot of
I
drive-through.
heard about this. I heard about this. Yeah.
Yeah, I was at Burger King today. Okay, and
Okay. I heard about the Wendy's one.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, there's Wendy's, there's Taco Bell, there's all these ones, McDonald's,
Okay.
like they have failed. And so I'm curious, and I've one of the things, and if you've been listening to this podcast, you're gonna laugh because I say the same things over and over again, and I believe they're in progression, right? First, you had Frontier Airlines who was like, "Yeah, we're not gonna take your calls anymore. If you call our number, it's gonna just end your call. You have to talk to us through our app. That's it." And you're like, what? I was like, I don't want to be in an airport when my flight gets canceled and I can't get to anyone to figure out how I'm getting home. So that's number one.
Right.
Then we
Yep.
went to the Taco Bell, McDonald's, Wendy's. The Taco Bell one was the one where the guy was ordering through the speaker and the AI
Mhm.
put 10,000 orders on his bill.
Oh,
And I'm
wow.
just like, whoa.
Uh,
And that was after 2 million orders. This thing blew up
oh
and put
my
10,000 miles.
gosh.
All right. So like there's an example of where it's a finite, very reproducible, fixed
Hmm.
menu, and it blew up. Right.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so you've also seen the legal cases come out of like the airlines and other industries where the AI chatbot inaccurately responded and caused the breach of their own terms of service,
Right. Right.
right? Which
Yeah. Yeah.
created, effectively, what seemed to be a large class action lawsuit of people not
Mm.
getting what they were supposed to be getting because the
Right.
machine was not following the rules, of the company. And
Right.
so I don't know, like I guess all of these are early adopter things to some
Sure.
degree, and like they will
Sure.
get smoothed out over time. I believe, and I would love to hear your opinion because whether you like it or not, you're in a service industry one way or another.
Right. Right.
If you take the human being part out, and you just rely on the computer, and the computer's cold as much as they say that it can be tweaked to make it feel however you want to,
Mm-hmm.
you disconnect from your buyer, you disconnect from your customer, and
Right.
I believe that that just makes it totally transactional at that point. The
Right.
ability to create the good vibes, feelings we say that happen at events, effectively you eliminate them from the conversation, and now you're just another
Right.
thing on the credit card bill. So
Yeah,
for
I don't
my
disagree with that. Yeah.
Okay, so for my
Yeah.
action, shouldn't the MSP be figuring out how to, and not totally my thought, I've been talking to a lot of people over these podcasts over the
Sure.
last 12 months, but
Sure.
augmenting the human experience so that you can make it targeted, faster, a little bit less
Yeah.
bumbly, and just
Yep.
like enhance it so that it feels more VIP.
Personalized.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head, and those are the good use cases, right? And so, sales automation, and there's a whole bunch of tools that are out there now using AI. And what they talk about is enrichment, right? It's exactly what you said. So I have a call, with a prospect, and during my call, I'm getting information about the prospect. Of course, it's available before my call, but I can now see what school they went to, how they previously engaged with us, what their interests are, what they've posted on LinkedIn. All of that just informs the conversation so it can have a more personalized conversation. And on the flip side of that, that other person says, "Oh, okay, you know who I am, you know who I work for, and you understand a little bit about my needs." But all that information was always there. It's just now being presented to you in summation form, real time, which is helpful, right? So, and I was going to ask you that question. So you kind of presented the downside of AI. What do you see in the MSP space specifically? What are some good winning use cases for AI? What have you
Uh,
seen?
well, I'll tell you what, a lot of it is experimental, in my opinion. Okay. I
Okay.
don't care how much money the big boys are spending, and there's a lot of money being spent here, all the way up to
Yep.
even the Microsofts. Okay. Let's be honest. And I've
Yep.
heard of a lot of people getting 6 months into a project with AI, and then the results completely change all of a sudden overnight. And so
Mm.
that's a little
Hmm.
bit worrying to me. You put all this time, effort in, you proved it, you tested it, you labbed it, you came out with something, and then the results inverted on you unexpectedly. And now you had to roll it
Mm.
back and try again. That's a lot of time investment to get to that point. All that being said,
Right.
um, I'll also comment and say a lot of what I am seeing personally through the feeds and just me walking through events is a lot of hype. I'm not sure the results are what are being marketed, right? This is no different than, go back to in my journey way back to 2011 and 2012 and 2013 when I was promised over and over again single pane of glass. And the
Yep.
single pane of glass
Yep.
never came. But I bought it and I never got it. And so like I feel like we're back to this again, just with a different, picture in front of me. But I digress. Good parts are being able to find information faster, right? Being able to
Hmm.
have the system take reoccurring things, like even in my mailbox, and like do
Yeah.
things for me so I don't have to do them over and over again. Like
Right.
almost like, and it's by the way, some of the things I'm mentioning here could be done without the AI, right?
Sure.
Without
Absolutely.
the agent. But like what they've done is they've made it a little bit easier to get to, right?
Hmm.
And so you didn't have to spend the time to do it the other way, right? So we're seeing a lot of just, hey, if I can take 10%, 15%, 20% of the tasks that you do all the time and remove them. I'm not saying you still don't have to do it, it just takes less
Right.
time. And then what do you do with your now newly found time, right? Isn't that,
So,
finally
so
I came to that realization.
I have a different question for you then,
Sure.
related to. So we've been talking about AI being used by MSPs
Hmm.
to make MSPs more efficient, but also not losing that human touch, right?
Yeah.
What about the other use case, which is MSPs delivering AI as a service to their clients?
I'll be honest, I have not successfully seen many do it.
Okay. It's
I mean,
early, very
I,
early.
I, I,
Yep.
I think one of the challenges is, and I've heard all sorts of stuff, right? N8N and agent kits and
Hmm.
Copilot, all this, whatever, right?
Sure, sure.
There is a DevOps component to this. right? Like,
That's
and I
important.
would think most MSPs do not have that capability in-house.
Yep.
And so that's
Yep.
scary to me, right? Because you go
Right.
to your customer, trusted advisor, technology consultant, let's help make your business more efficient. You're pitching,
Right.
pitching, pitching this new shiny tool. And like on the surface, some of that stuff's easy because it's pre-built for you. The second you got to get into anything serious, now you're worried about the line of business app that your end customer is using, which you don't really touch on a regular other than setting users up in potentially or resetting a
That's right.
password. And now you got to connect into the brain to make it do something. Do you even know how that works? Do you know APIs? Have you done that work before? Because just putting an API key in doesn't do the job.
You know, these are really good points, right? And I think there's a question as to whether MSPs today are capable of delivering on that because of those issues. But maybe the question then becomes, hey, maybe you need to upskill, right? And so if you do have, for example, you've heard of some of these big time backed MSP roll-ups that are intended to be AI native. If they are, yep, if they're setting that bar, do you now have to upskill to gain these skills in order to
Oh,
deliver AI as a
okay.
service?
Can I give you?
These are all questions, right?
All right, let me give you the more practical way.
Yep.
Everybody has heard of Fiverr, probably, right? It's just,
Yes.
before you could go to Canva and just type in something and it made an image for you, you would go to Fiverr and pay, 5, 10, $20, whatever, for some sort of media to be created. And there's a bunch of other stuff to
Sure.
do there. But so I
Right.
believe what will happen in the short term is MSPs don't have the skills. It'll take them too long to get to functional on those skills. They'll simply find somebody who can outsource a project to it. It's a one-time project. They go and build something that works today, but you and I
Hmm.
both know that these APIs across all these platforms change often and they break
Hmm.
things. And then all of a
Hmm.
sudden, you pitch your customer this new shiny tool that works today, but in 6 months from now, something changed that broke it. Now
Yeah.
you're going back and you're trying to find that person that helped you on that one-off project and you can't find them. And now you're stuck. And so this is
Right.
my fear, right? On
Yep.
people overpromising on the delivering and not
Right.
thinking, to your point, long term. Short term, anything can happen, but long term, I'm still old school in the mindset of if I recommended it, if I suggested it, if I gave
Yep.
you pointed you in a direction, that's going to come back to me at some point
It's
if it
your
goes badly,
responsibility.
right? Usually when it
Right.
doesn't work is when I get hit. That's a
Yep.
situation where it's not going to go well.
So two things to take away on this topic, right? Number one, cautionary tale, right? So let's be cautious, maybe cautiously optimistic. And the second, being an entrepreneur, everything you just talked about is a challenge. So with challenges come opportunities. So for the other entrepreneurs that are out there, George is bringing up the challenges that have to be addressed. And I think that is a good thing to understand those actual operational challenges that need to be addressed before you start putting your product or your service out there. Good stuff.
100%. Real quick,
Yep.
talk to us about what's happening at your SaaS company.
Sure.
It's been a little while, so it'd be good for
Yeah.
everybody to understand what are you solving for? What's net new? Why would MSPs look for you to help solving whatever it is that you can help them with?
Well, thanks for asking. And, you know, we see the most demand today from MSPs for automated pen testing.
Oh.
And yeah, and that's where look, for the longest time, cybersecurity, hot space, but typically viewed as a necessary evil sometimes or a cost. And I think where automated pen testing kind of flips that on its head is it positions MSPs to go into prospects,
Hmm.
be able to actually perform cybersecurity risk assessments themselves, right?
Hmm.
Without having to hire an outside team and being able to generate that cybersecurity risk assessment. That's what automated pen testing does. We like to think that we produce the best in class reports because we know how important reporting is to that non-technical user. And so it basically gives MSP's ability to win new clients with a differentiated, beautiful report about all the problems that we were able to find that an adversary would be able to exploit. And that can be very meaningful to that client or prospect that then converts them to a client. So I'd love to hear your feedback. We've been in different ecosystems, whether it's ConnectWise or whether it's Kaseya, and pen testing is certainly something that people are realizing can get them into accounts, present interesting, beautiful reports, turn them into clients, and then turn that into a managed
Okay.
offering with
So
everything
let me
else we
so
do.
so I said my
Yep.
progression, right? Frontier, the drive-throughs, the
Oh
airlines.
yeah.
So
Yep.
so back in the early, again, my journey, think 2010, 2011, 2012, that kind of
Mhm.
2010s beginning part there. Definitely 2011 for me now that I think about it. They're like, "Oh, put out your agent. It's going to throw a discovery out. It's going to figure out what's on the network. And like maybe the RMM can create a report for you." Then it turned into things like rapid fire tools is one that comes to mind, right? Where you would
Yep.
run a
Yep.
one-time scan and it would try and create this report for you. We're not going to argue about whether it's good or not. It just, this was the
Sure.
marketing
That's
message,
what it
right?
did. Yep.
And
Yep.
then, once all the compliance things came in, right? Like people who are
Hmm.
in regulated industry, which by the way, most SMBs are not, but some of them
Right.
are.
Yep.
Like let's say somebody was going for some sort of industry, SOC 2 or some sort of other certification or attestation, and part of that was a
Hmm.
pen test, right? Now,
Yep.
that word has been morphed, I feel like, and depending on who you talk to, it's a completely different thing. But,
Sure.
like, hey, I'm required to do this as part of the process to get to the end of this road, right?
Right.
And
Right.
like, was that 5,000, 10, 15, 20? I don't know. I've heard crazy prices all over the
20 to
map.
30. Yep.
Okay.
20 to 30. Yep.
Like, see, right? So then
Yep.
all of a sudden it's all right, somebody did it. Now you've gotten this report. Now you have to remediate it before you can actually move forward with whatever the next step was, or else it's just going to
Right.
say that you got problems, and that means
Sure.
you have a pretty bad report at the end of that, right? So,
Yep.
so putting all of that, and maybe that's the enterprise part of this conversation, and I'm trying
Mostly.
to
Yep.
realize that the majority of MSPs are dealing with sub 200, sub 150 employee,
Sure.
small, medium business. Like, so instead of the pen test from a compliance standpoint, I'm not, and maybe it will still apply there. You tell us,
Yep.
how do they turn around and take this largely technical conversation to somebody who's,
Hmm.
I don't know, a lawyer, an accountant, architect, doctor who's running a sole practice, whatever, and you're going to hand them this report and they're going to say, okay, now what?
Great question. And I think what you're really saying is, what do I do with this information from a business point of view?
Hmm.
Um, Most of the MSPs who were in growth mode are talking to prospects who typically have an MSP, right? And so what they need to do is compete to win that business. And I think we all know we don't want to compete on dollars, right? Because we don't want to race to the bottom. It drives down pricing and everyone margins get thinner. Um, so what do you compete on? You compete on value, right?
Hmm.
So what makes you more valuable than the next guy or the person that's offering that service today? We think for MSPs, the ones that come in and say, "Hey, I can also protect you. You don't need to necessarily outsource that to someone else, but I can secure your network." It begins by an assessment, right? So I think it's very compelling to say, hey, we'll do a cybersecurity risk assessment. And if and when you find serious holes in their network that an adversary could exploit, you've really got the trump card there
Hmm.
because you're talking about a network that's currently being managed that maybe left open a telnet port, um, or they have admin on their backup on-site storage, like that never happens, right? And then when you show exactly how you owned root or got admin, or you found that their global admin user didn't have MFA enabled, right? Their DMARC was either not set up or improperly set up, so anyone can use their domain to send spam, right? All of these are different ways that adversaries exploit users, I'm sorry, exploit holes on networks to get onto networks. presenting that puts you in a power position that you can then go and say, hey, I'm going to clean this up for you, right? And then we're going to manage it, monitor it continuously, make sure when there's drift, we identify the drift and we correct for that. And every time you sit down in a QBR, you're showing, here's what we found, here's what we did, here's how you're more secure today than you were yesterday.
Okay, I got it. And by the way, that makes perfect sense. It's basically you're saying, hey, your door is wide open. Like you
Yeah,
may not value security, but if you literally make it so easy that anybody can take you down, then
right.
that should be handled. And by the way, here it is. I think I've always seen the struggle, and I don't want to take too much time,
Hmm.
but I've always seen the struggle of the MSP articulating value in this conversation because the
Right.
check signer on the other side largely doesn't care. They don't find the
Yeah.
value because they haven't had a problem yet. And so
Right.
because they haven't had that pain, they're not concentrated in this lane. But if you're
Yes.
turning around and you're like, hey, listen, guy, I know you never had your car stolen, but if you leave your key in the car on the curb and somebody steals it,
Yep.
don't be upset because that's what we're talking about here. And I would think that
Right.
anybody non-technical can understand that scenario and be like, I guess you have a point. Maybe we shouldn't do
It
that.
it's where the rubber meets the road, right? So you mentioned vulnerability scanning, and we do also do that. But the way I think about pen testing is, and vulnerability scanning, vulnerability scan gives you the entire attack surface. These
Okay.
are all the potential ways I can might be able to get onto the network, right? And the problem with vulnerability scanning is that it's noisy. No one wants to see the CVEs, the vulnerabilities. It means nothing to them, right? So where pen testing comes in is we actually actively attempt to exploit every vulnerability with a
Hmm.
simulated payload, right? And so the ones where we can actually exploit and gain privilege, perhaps root or admin, that's the proof in the pudding. It's where the rubber meets the road. So now you no longer have to talk about vulnerabilities. Now you're showing, and by the way, here's how I was able to get in and compromise this machine and then get to your AD server and then compromise credentials and so on and so forth, right? That report that shows that is not noisy. It's the proof in the pudding. It establishes your value. It shows why, to your analogy of the car, why you don't leave the keys on the dash for everyone to see. It's that report that actually gets the attention.
Okay. And so I assume this applies to not just local networks, it could be your cloud environment.
Absolutely. So you want to look at every attack surface, right? So what's an attack surface? It's anything an adversary can see and exploit. So that includes the external attack surface, which is things like web servers, firewalls. It includes cloud. The biggest cloud service, of course, is Microsoft, right? So we use a security baseline for Microsoft from the U.S. Cybersecurity Agency called Scuba Gear, and
Never
we
heard
will
of that.
analyze. Yeah, well, it's the high bar in security baselines for Microsoft 365. The federal government mandates it for all of their agencies. You have to follow the Scuba Gear standard. It's a long acronym, so the way the feds do it. But we do, it's very prescriptive. It tells you exactly what the secure setting is, if
Hmm.
you're out of compliance, and what you need to do to get in compliance. And then we automate that too. So that's the largest attack surface, it turns out, for SMB, because you've got email, you've got Teams, you have Defender, you have OneDrive, SharePoint, Azure, all of it is attack surface. So, and all of it, by the way, out of the box isn't necessarily configured or it's configured secure. So you want to analyze that. You want to find those exposures before the bad guys do, correct it, produce a beautiful report that shows here's what we found, here's what we fixed, here's why you're now more secure.
No, this is important. This is important because, again, we're not saying that you're going to walk into a compliance conversation. You're basically going to your customer in the 2025 version of what I talked about in 2011, 12, 13, 14. This is the nouveau way of saying, hey, listen, let's not be, let me go back to the cliche. I don't have to outrun the bear, I just have to outrun you, right? Like,
Yep.
the guy
Yep.
next door has left his front door open or left his keys in the car, they're going to go steal that person's stuff before they come and see your stuff because they got to do extra work to get into your stuff.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And if you went back to like 1998, you would be the club. You remember the club?
I remember the club until then
Yeah.
then they found out you could get through the club with like two things from like the dollar store.
Yeah. Going back
Um,
to the lock picking, right? Yeah.
I mean, once I saw that, I was like, well, I guess that company just went out the door. I don't know what happened. Whatever happened to the club? I guess I should look it up.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, maybe everyone else has to because that really dates us. Yeah.
yeah, 100%. I do remember the
Yeah.
infomercials for it. I know
Yeah.
we're up on time and that you're at an event, so thank you so much for like taking time away from the event to do this. Really found it, very interesting. And by the way, this whole year, everybody's giving me a little bit of different thought on AI. I should take the clips from all of them and smash them together because it really provides like a 360 kind of view from a lot of different angles. But
I
I
love
think
that idea.
yeah,
Yep.
I think that what it comes down to in the MSP space is, hey, listen, I think there's a toy store part of this whole industry, right? You could constantly playing with new tech and cool things and shiny objects. And by the way, that's why a lot of the reason I got into it. But um, practicality is important. And if you're going to stick your reputation on something, you want to make sure that
Hmm.
it's a long-term, conversation, right? I'm all for
Right.
the quick win. I think we all are. But that quick win, if it slides off the wall, it doesn't help you. I think it comes back to get worse if you can't keep it going. So, where do people find more information about you, your company, how to contact them, how to get more information, maybe see some information?
Yeah, go to threatmate.com. We have two white papers, which are very educational. One on AI driven pen testing. It's kind of like the journey from vulnerability scanning to automated pen test to what's next, which is AI driven pen testing. Kind of feeds into our conversation really well. Um, and you can figure out where you are in that journey by reading the white paper. The second is around M365 security, what we just talked about, what your options are. All of it is just intended to be educational. We get a ton of downloads with people just reading so they can get smart on these topics. So threatmate.com, take a look, consume some content, reach out if you have any questions. We're always glad to help.
Awesome. Good luck. Hopefully, get some downtime coming towards the end of the holiday season here at the end of the month,
Same to
and
you.
catch you on the other side.
Thanks, George.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.